Shabaka. My name is Lela Christine. My co-host Moshi Lewis, and I gotta say, how you doing today?
Sure, good.
You
Feeling
good?
good. You looking great.
Thank you. And it's raining outside. Oh my God, I can't believe it. So I want to welcome everybody to Power Pod Talks, hosted by Power Player Lifestyle Magazine. So we're excited today. We have an amazing guest, and he's extraordinary. A friend. He's very talented. Hollywood loves him. People love him. We love him.
Absolutely.
So I want to introduce you to Barry Shabaka Henley.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. A nice Saturday morning, you know.
Exactly. I'm
Rainy
looking
day.
great.
Yeah, I'm feeling, I'm all right.
Sure.
I ain't got no complaints. I'm grateful,
Exactly.
Yes.
That's, hey,
you know.
every day, nothing but thanks.
Yeah.
Leela knows I always like to kind of roll back the clock of time. And I want to talk a little bit about your jazz roots and growing up in New Orleans before you went to San Fran, which is where I'm from. Sort of how it just started to get infused in your ear and in your life.
Well, I mean, there are like a couple of very specific things that, you know, contribute to the development, but at the same time, it's a lot of things.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, the city is one thing.
Right.
We lived next door to my uncle, who was Harold Batiste,
Okay.
and a family friend who lived on the other side of us, Alvin Batiste,
Right.
who
So,
was
and that whole family
just, I mean, they,
is amazing.
and around the corner from the Marcellus family.
Right. Wow.
So, and, you know, my mother went to elementary school with Ellis Marcellus.
Right. Wow.
And
Wow.
I am older than all of the Marcellus boys.
Mhm.
But later in life, I connected. Delfeo Marcellus is a good friend of mine,
Mhm.
but later in life, we connected. But I think the city has its own, you know, spirit of
Yes.
music that
Pulse.
exists there, you
Mhm.
know, and I think the fact that if you just take one fact alone, the birth of Louis Armstrong
Right.
in that city, you start with, you know, the beginning of an art form that has made it just a global impact on world culture.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I think, including myself, I really didn't understand the importance of Mr. Armstrong until, you know, the last 10 years of my life of doing, I mean, you think about it, the fact that this music didn't exist when he was born.
Right.
And by the time he died in 1970, it was, you know, less than a century it had taken over the world in many
Right.
ways.
An established genre.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And, you know, until he went to Chicago in 1922 to play with Joe Oliver, jazz had not really been heard outside of New Orleans.
Mhm.
On the river boats, you know, when the river boats went up the Mississippi, Lewis played on the boats and they heard it then. But the music, they say, if jazz is born in New Orleans, the reality of it is it matured and grew up in Chicago
Mhm.
because Lewis went from New Orleans to Chicago, played with Joe Oliver, after saying that he would never leave New Orleans.
Mhm.
And so Lewis was 21 years old, went to Chicago, married the piano player, Lil Hardin of the group,
Right.
stayed and decided he was going to see what he could do on his own. And, you know, when he was playing with Joe Oliver, he was playing like duets. He was, you know, they would play duets. He is the one that is responsible for jazz becoming a soloist genre. Before
Yes.
that, it was an ensemble
Right.
music.
Good point.
But, you know, Mr. Armstrong brought that whole, that's why I call him King Louis the First. I mean,
Okay, I like
you know,
that.
you know, he never liked to be called Louis, but he said everybody did, so it didn't bother him. Louis was what he preferred to be called. And so I prefer to call him King Louis the First because he is. And so for me, how I got exposed to the music, my mother was a dance teacher.
Yes.
And so she, you know, they did everything: ballet, jazz, modern, Afro-Cuban, Afro-Haitian, West African. They did everything.
Right.
And she had the records.
Right. And you
And
tagged along.
Well, there was no child care in those days. I mean, you either, at home by yourself at
Right.
6 or 7 years old,
Yeah.
or you're there. And so we were there every night or at rehearsals, and the place where she taught these kids were like from the projects. And I'll never forget, just it makes me think of just human potential and what is the difference between this person and that person, and success and failure is just opportunity.
Right.
And I would wager that none of those girls continued with it, and
Well,
many of them, were pregnant in their teens, but I think that one of the things I would like to dedicate myself to as a now an elder in the community
right.
is to nurture potential
hmm
that exists, because like I said, the only difference is opportunity. That's the only thing that sets success and
Opportunity.
failure is opportunity.
Definitely.
So I would like to, put my energies towards some of the amazing potential that exists untapped around me.
Let's talk about opportunity. When did you receive your first, how can I say, movie where you were just excited about it and they said, you're cast in this role? When did that? What was the first film that just got you so excited and you were just like, I think I have arrived?
Well, the funny thing, even after that, um, you're not sure if you've arrived.
Right.
I've heard people say that.
Welcome to
Yes.
Hollywood.
Exactly.
I mean, it's
Still waiting sometimes.
yeah, it's a great opportunity, and it's like, like they say, you're only as good as your last job,
Wow, that's
and,
true.
and it takes a kind of momentum that in order to capitalize on the opportunity, it takes a momentum that has probably started shortly before that
Right,
opportunity. And
right.
I don't know, I would probably have to say there's a couple of landmark films for me that were films that were steps, I thought. The movie Devil in a Blue Dress,
Yes,
I thought
love
I
that.
played a very small, bizarre role in it,
Right.
but it was a great film. Carl Franklin directed
Right,
it with
right.
Denzel
Denzel,
Washington
that was
and
great.
Don Cheadle, and so just a terrific film.
It was.
I think I was also played a small role in What's Love Got to Do with
Yes.
It,
What's
um,
that?
with Angela and
Right.
Lawrence, and
Right. How Stella.
Yes.
How Stella Got Her Groove
How
Back.
Stella got her groove back.
I forgot about that. People,
They remember.
I try to
That's
forget
true.
about it, but a lot of times people, talk about that film, and I say, well, that wasn't me. That was my twin brother.
Exactly.
We'd never do something so embarrassing in a
Right.
film,
Oh my God.
But yeah, I mean, but for me, I think the film that I was most excited about
hmm
was Ali.
Oh yeah,
Mhm,
that
mhm.
was just awesome. Will Smith.
Oh, and
Yes.
being a lifelong fan of Ali.
Right.
It's a funny thing. I had a really interesting sort of journey with Muhammad Ali because when he was Cassius Clay,
Mhm.
my stepfather was not a fan. My
Really?
stepfather said, I'll never forget, we sat down at the kitchen table, listened to the radio
Right.
when he fought Sonny Liston.
Right.
And at that point, my stepfather's position was, he can't be that bad can't be that tough because he runs his mouth too much.
Right.
And
Talk.
people
Muhammad
that,
Ali.
are tough and real,
Yeah.
they
Right.
don't run their mouths. They just
Right.
go out and get the job
Get it.
done.
Exactly.
And Sonny Liston is that kind of a guy.
Right.
And he better be careful because Sonny Liston could hurt him.
Right.
And man, after that fight, and he announced that his name was Muhammad Ali,
Mhm.
my stepfather took a step back
Yeah, right.
and said, "Oh,
Wait a minute.
okay, all right." He became, a Muhammad Ali fan.
Sure.
My stepfather was a devout Catholic. He was not a Muslim. He was a devout Catholic, but he recognized something about I don't know, the quality of the man
Mhm.
Yeah.
who was able to do something that went against everything in society in terms of the way the mainstream had portrayed Islam
Right. Sure.
and the Nation of Islam in
Mhm.
particular. And when he did that, my stepfather said, "Oh, I think I misjudged him."
Mhm.
Then when he decided he was not going to go to Vietnam,
That
he became a god
Right.
in my house because
Yeah.
my stepfather was not a very political person or,
Right.
Mhm.
not a very well educated person,
Mhm.
but he was totally against the war in Vietnam.
Right.
Right.
And, we were 10 years old and he was telling us, there's a war going on and I'll break your legs before you go.
Right.
Right.
Right. School of common sense.
Yes.
Yeah. And we looked at each other and then we looked at him, we said, "What is Vietnam?"
Right. Right.
Yes.
What are you talking about? We have no idea what,
Right.
You're
He'll
upset.
say, "Well, you'll find out soon enough."
Mhm.
Okay. But that was, I think Ali to answer your question, would be the first
Yes.
big film. But for me, I think what informs me as an artist and a human
Mhm.
being
Mhm.
is as much the time in history that I grew up. I mean,
Mhm.
I, I'm born in New Orleans where I was 10 years old before the Civil Rights and Voting Rights
Right.
Acts
Came
came.
to.
And
Wow.
so the first years of my life was under complete Jim Crow apartheid.
Wow.
I
That's
mean,
deep.
that's my first entry into this world was that blacks and whites were separated. Being born and living in Louisiana in the 1950s,
Yes.
it was a given. And to uh, leave that environment and go to San Francisco
Right.
Mhm.
Which is.
and to not only go to San Francisco, we lived in the Haight-Ashbury
Right.
district.
Right.
Wow.
Be
We
more
lived
more
on
hippie.
Page and Clayton,
Right. Sure.
which is 2 blocks
Yeah.
from Haight and
Right.
Ashbury,
Exactly.
Wow.
Right.
And so we lived there before the counterculture and the hippies and all
Right.
that
No,
happened. And we moved about a year into them coming. It was
Mhm.
like, okay, this is getting too
Getting
hectic.
intense.
Right.
And we moved out to, the avenues
Mhm.
at that point. But, growing up in those years and also being my formative years, they, informed who I am and helped shape the person I am today. And I'm
Right.
grateful for all of it. I mean, I'm grateful for being born in Jim Crow America. I'm grateful for that education and that
Mhm.
understanding that I have of, the culture that we live in.
Yes.
You're very well read, and you've said words to the effect of the job or the work of an actor is to always seek the truth. What do you mean when you say that?
Well, I mean, I think that a lot of people have a misconception of what acting is.
Mm-hmm.
They think acting is just performing.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
They think it's mimicry, or they think it's, a lot of different things that it isn't. And I had an acting teacher, Marguerite Roma was her name. She was a
Mm-hmm.
Swiss, German, Jewish Shakespeare director. And she said that there in terms of approaches to uh, a character or a performance, there's the external way, like commedia dell'arte, clowning, physical theater,
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and there's the very deep kind of psychological Stanislavski method of psychological motivations for the character. Those are on the both ends, and then you have musical theater and all kinds of other things in the middle.
Right.
And what she said is, all I want from you is the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't care how you get there. Some people get there from the outside in. There's a lot of,
Mhm.
like I heard Robert De Niro once say that, once he gets a character's voice,
Mm-hmm.
he's on the right track and the right trail and he'll work through that. And the truth is just, presenting the words of the writer, but infusing it with a moment-to-moment reality. That is the truth. I mean, the
Right.
truth lives in the moment. And if you're there, you may not have amazing skill as an actor,
Right.
but if you are in the moment and telling the truth, some of the great performances I've seen have been people who are not actors.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Very real.
yeah. I mean, it's very funny, but I think Mike Tyson is a good actor.
Really?
I do. I was watching an episode of Law and Order SVU,
Mhm.
and he was some guy who was a young boxer who had been sexually molested by his coach, and he was on death row because he had killed somebody.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like Mike was real. I mean,
Right.
I
You
felt
felt the
it.
energy.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
and that's really what it is. It's if you are in contact with the truth of the character, that truth translates to the audience. That's when people feel things, when it's true. They don't, they may be amused or entertained by something that's more on the surface, but they're touched. They feel things when an actor brings the truth.
Mhm.
So here is something I have to ask. Michael, Collateral Damage. I remember the scene.
Collateral.
Collateral. The scene, that character that you played, that was so impactful. Tell me more about that particular film. That's one of my favorite. I loved you in
Well,
that
I
role.
mean, I think as an actor on film, that's probably my favorite piece of work also
Yes,
to
yes.
do, and the result and the process. It was, that for me was I felt like I had arrived.
Okay. All right. There you go.
I mean, but when I realized that that one scene, there was a lot of work that went into it.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't, just turn on the camera and this brilliant actor comes and knocks it out of the park.
Right.
It was far from that.
Right. 80 takes later.
Yeah, I mean, we rehearsed that scene.
Yes.
Many times, almost 2 months before we shot it.
Right. Wow.
Okay.
We rehearsed it. We would get together on Saturdays, on
Right.
weekends, and rehearse it. And originally, the scene was about Louis Armstrong.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And then Michael and I, the night before we shot, literally the night before we shot,
Mm-hmm.
went to his office and we sat down and we rearranged everything for Miles Davis.
Mhm.
Right.
And I'll never forget at the end of the thing, Michael says, well, okay, the Louis Armstrong beat ended with a riddle. What
Right.
was Louis Armstrong's first instrument?
Right.
And when we get to the end, he says, well, what's the riddle on this one? I mean, there's got to be a riddle.
Mhm.
So, well, I think a good one would be, where did Miles Davis learn music?
Mm-hmm.
And he said, where? I said, well, he went to Juilliard, but he dropped out,
Mhm.
and he used to buy dope for Charlie Parker, who
Okay.
mentored him for the next year.
Wow.
And,
That's
that's
where he
where he
learned.
learned music.
Wow.
And he said, okay, good. And that became the riddle in the film.
Right.
And, although I answered correctly, of course, he shot me. But
Right.
for me, that was a really beautiful collaborative thing. We went back and forth over what instrument I was going to play. And when I first, Michael first told me that he wanted me to do it, he got me this trumpet, and I started to take trumpet lessons. And then about
Really?
2 weeks into that, he said, you know what, I've changed my mind. I think I want you to run saxophone.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And so he gave me a saxophone, and I
Right.
started taking sax lessons.
Wow.
And the day of the shoot,
Mm-hmm.
he says, I think I want to change it back to
Back to the
trumpet.
trumpet. Exactly. After all that.
I love that. That's
decisive.
classical.
Yeah. I
Never in
said,
doubt.
okay. And what's the song? Because we had
Right.
agreed on earlier, we had talked about Goodbye Pork Pie
Yes.
Mhm.
had Charles Mingus,
Right.
and he said, I think this one works better. And it was Spanish Key by Miles Davis from
Mhm.
Bitches Brew.
Right.
And he was absolutely right. but this was all,
Right.
on
In the
the
moment.
day.
Right.
Yeah.
After all that. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I think that's one thing Michael does really well with actors is,
Mhm.
And Michael Mann, I should say.
Michael
Yes,
Mann.
Michael
Yes,
Mann.
I'm sorry. He
That's okay. There's so many.
he knows how to keep things fresh because he's always throwing surprises at you,
Right.
changing the script, changing lines.
Mhm.
So the basic is you got to know. You have to know your lines.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
You have to know them. And it's kind of like a piece of music.
Right.
I mean, you learn the piece of music, and the better you know it, the better you play it.
That's right.
Right. And then you add
You can add,
who you
embellish.
are, what you
Right.
feel,
Yeah.
what the audience gives you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I brought up jazz and music, because it's yet another theme that unites another Michael, which is why I wanted to differentiate them on your current show. You all have that in common and both love jazz a lot. Talk to us about the friendship that's emerging between you and your
On
co-host.
CBS, yeah.
You talking about Billy?
Sure, yeah, exactly.
Billy Gardell?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Billy, my man. Love Billy. Love me some Billy Gardell.
Yeah.
He's we're dear friends. And we share really ridiculous jokes
Yes.
that nobody else would
Right. Get it.
Billy is a prince, man. He really is somebody who is in a leadership position in a very high profile situation.
Mhm.
Right.
But, his humility is the thing that comes through more than anything else. And he is a talented actor, far more talented than you would think.
Right.
Because he's a former comedian
Right.
but he in many ways reminds me of a modern day Jackie Gleason.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
And he'd worked on, I think, Mike and Molly previously. Or
Oh yeah, Mike
Yeah.
and Molly. Yeah,
Mhm.
he was Mike.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But no, Billy's wonderful to work with, and he's wonderful to have as a sort of lead person in our world there, because he's very professional, he's very compassionate, and he treats everybody with respect from every department. That's that's the way I do things, and I'm very comfortable around somebody who does them like that too.
There's no big eyes and little U's. It's
No.
just people being together.
And everybody working on the same
Yes.
thing. We're all,
Yes.
trying to achieve the same end, whether you're, working in catering or lighting or cinematography. Everybody is on the same team, and
Right.
Billy is a great team player, team leader.
And that's what you need, specifically being in Hollywood, the team.
Oh yeah.
The team makes, the TV show, the film set amazing. And then coming to films, do you have any new films that we can look forward to seeing in 2023 or 2024?
No, I don't. It's funny with doing this show, you are unavailable most of the year.
Wow.
And there's only a
Okay.
couple of months that you are available.
Okay.
And so, it's hard to even think about that. But
Right.
last year, I co-executive produced a documentary film.
Right. 100 years from Mississippi.
Yes.
Yeah, 100 Years from Mississippi.
Mississippi.
And directed by my dear brother Tarabu Betsarai, who did a wonderful job on it. And we had a lot of just great contributions. My friend Kev Mo
Right.
did a
Yes.
couple of tunes for it. And
Yes.
I remember asking Kev,
Right. From the jazz world, I should say, because some people may not
Yeah.
appreciate
oh yeah.
He's a big
Yeah.
fan of music. Yes.
Well, Kev had actually come out for Miss Kirkland's memorial service.
Right.
And he played at the service.
Right. Who is the woman that the
Who
story
was the
is about?
subject,
Right.
yes, of 100 Years from Mississippi, Mamie Kirkland, who lived to be 111.
Right. Amazing.
And so he came out and he played one song. He was living in Nashville. Came out, played one song, and went home the next morning.
Mhm.
And Tarabu says to me, "Man, wouldn't it be great if we could get Kev to do some music for the film?"
Right.
Mhm.
And I said, "Yeah." He said, "What would it take, for that to
Just
happen?"
hypothetically.
I mean, Kev's won 5, 6 Grammys.
sure.
I mean,
Right.
I lose track.
Right.
And I met Kev in 1991 when he had no Grammys.
Right.
Okay.
You know,
Wow.
but I said, I don't know. I'll ask him. So
Right.
I called Keb. I said,
Yeah.
hey, Keb, what would it take to get you to do some music for the film? Because we don't really have any money.
Right.
He
Okay.
said, ask me.
Right. Wow. That's amazing.
That's great.
Sure.
And I asked him, and he made two of the most powerful contributions to the film musically.
Wow.
In fact, he does the closing song.
Mhm.
The song, as the film closes, that's Keb's Marvelous to Me.
Marvelous to me.
It's wonderful.
Sure. Talk to us about the significance of a Nigerian family being on a channel like CBS. The character you play is Tunde, and just how important that is. Really about sort of family and cultures coming together.
Mm-hmm.
It's groundbreaking. I'm, it's truly groundbreaking. It's
We love the
not
show.
something to just sort of sneeze at. I mean,
Right.
especially the show came on in a climate of
Mhm.
Right.
a lot of anti-immigrant fervor, and I
Right.
still think there is.
Yeah.
It
Yes.
exists. But we came on at a time when there was a lot of anti-immigrant, and particularly a lot of immigrant of color, black
Right.
Right.
immigrants,
Yeah.
Haitians and what.
Haitians.
West
And
Indians. Yes.
our former chiefs said what? I don't know what kind of profanity you can use, but
Right.
S
Right.
whole nations,
Right.
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
so that the show came on in that climate,
Yeah.
Right.
Very
you know,
intense.
and Chuck Lorre, to his credit, they had the mega hats.
Right.
Right.
Make America white, great
Great
again.
again. Right. Sure.
And
Sorry. Right.
and Chuck put out a hat. Immigrants make America great.
Right.
Okay. Yes.
So that was part of where he was coming from to begin
Mhm,
with.
mhm.
Sure.
And Gina Yashere, who is just one of the most amazing people I've ever met. She's, acts on the show.
Right.
She's the executive producer and co-creator. She's the head writer, and now she's the showrunner.
Okay.
Wow.
And
Okay.
she's doing them all. I
Multifaceted.
don't know how
That's
she does
right.
it.
I love
Without
it.
sleep.
Do
Yes.
not know how
Right.
she does it, but she's
Wow.
amazing. And the story is really one of the universality
Mhm.
of immigrants, because it's very common reality that
Yeah.
the specific makes it universal.
Right.
It's like if you went and examined, Romani culture, or you went and you examined, Arabic culture, or you
Mhm.
went and examined Russian culture. There is especially when they go to another place, there is a universality about their behavior.
Yes.
That's right.
And the only way to see it is through the specific. And I think, they've done an amazing job introducing an incredible culture
Right.
to mainstream American life. It's, and what's amazing to me about it is the show has an interracial couple,
Mm-hmm.
but the show has nothing to do with race.
Right.
Right.
Exactly. It's
The
about family.
differences they have are cultural.
Right.
They're not racial. And
Right.
the only conversations about race that take place are between the Nigerians and the African American.
Right.
So it's, I really, I really have a lot of affection for what this group of people has done.
And we can see it come across, in the show, because it's a weekly show. It's like a family show.
Yeah, it is
People
very
love
much a
it.
family show.
They tune
It's
in,
clean.
and
Or
it's
close enough.
clean.
It's clean, yeah,
Right.
yeah, you're right. And
But
it has, multi-generational cast.
Right.
yes,
And you're 4 seasons in now.
We're
Getting
4
to-
seasons in now,
Amazing.
yes,
and then
going to
we're
the fifth.
we're
That's what
going into the fifth.
going to the fifth.
Yeah, it's fall.
So here is an off-topic question, because you and I both believe in, the eco-friendly, holistic living, and you have inspired me as far as health is concerned, and you're always, into what's new as far as keeping yourself together. So let's talk about how do you keep you together during, a hectic schedule? You're a family man, you're married, you have, a child. How do you do it? And then the health and the balance, and what can you do to, how can I say, share with our audience how to keep yourself motivated by eating well, thinking well, and whatever it is that you do. That's what we need to get to. Do you meditate?
I
How's
think
your
you said it all. What she said.
right there, right there, right there.
Yeah,
You'll
no.
second that emotion.
That yeah,
Yes.
it's a combination of things.
Okay.
You know, but the key really is starting with thinking healthy.
Okay, I like that.
It's really
I like that.
thinking healthy and discipline to make right choices,
Right.
and the choices become a lifestyle as
That's true.
opposed to just like saying going on a diet or
Right.
something like that. It becomes a lifestyle, and I can't perform or if I'm not feeling well,
Right.
that comes across.
Right.
It does.
You know, I mean, there are times when you feel like you're on death's bed, you got food poisoning or the
Right.
flu or something, and you still perform. The audience can't tell that,
Right.
but you can tell,
Yeah.
and it's very depleting. And so you got to be on top of every aspect of your
Right.
psyche in order to really be comfortable in your workspace. And,
Right.
I lead a very, low key life. I'm not necessarily out there trying to make all the parties.
Right.
And,
It's like,
It's a lot of
I'm going to
parties,
work.
I
especially.
here they are.
Yes.
I have a 15-year-old son, and,
Right.
he's a lot of work,
Okay.
and
Teenagers are busy.
yeah.
Yes.
And teenagers in Los Angeles too, with
Oh,
all these
definitely.
influences and all
Oh
this
my gosh.
crap
Yes.
around,
I know.
and the value systems that go around are they're poisonous,
I know.
and
Yes.
that's a job for me to try to stay on top of that, and,
hmm
but it is
You're saving a teenager's life. No, literally.
It is. Saving
Being
them
a
in
parent,
themselves.
both, all of us are parents, and we
Yeah.
understand it.
Yeah.
And we're teenagers.
You save their
Definitely.
lives, and then one day they may save yours.
Yes.
Or may not.
Or may not.
Or may not.
Right. Depends on how the will's written.
Yeah.
One last thing I want to ask you about, though, that's amazing that I do think you do in this domain, but you may take it for granted is reading. How does that make you a better actor? How do you incorporate
Oh,
the fact that you're
God.
so well read?
The thing for me is research is as exciting as the work,
Mm.
because I think that research has given me like a degree you can't get at a college
I like
Right.
that.
in many different subjects. Because my, history has always been a big thing with me.
Yes.
I've always loved just reading about history, and biographies I find very, very instructive and very, and it's like once you get the job, you start the research,
Right.
and the excitement begins.
Exactly. I like that.
It just,
It's an adventure.
it is a great adventure, and there's so much amazing writing out. I mean, in terms of like history, I'm reading a book on boxing,
Mm.
The Bittersweet Science by Dr. Gerald Horne, and I think Dr. Gerald Horne is among the most important scholars
Mm.
in the world and historians, and not just for Black history, but he's just extraordinary. And I read his book Jazz and Justice.
Mm.
It for me, reading. I think about this often. I think about what would my life be like if I never learned to read?
Right.
Mhm.
What kind of confinement would I be experiencing without learning to read?
Right.
And the fact that I did learn to read,
hmm
I don't take it for granted. I said, this is a gift.
It is a gift. Yes.
It's a gift, and you have to honor it because it can lead. I mean, I remember as a kid, part of the reason I wanted to travel was reading,
Right.
you know. And then I was thinking, as a little kid, I was like, oh, how do I get to travel? What do you do to travel? And then we had a neighbor who was a merchant seaman.
Right.
And I thought, oh, maybe that's it.
Right.
Maybe I'll become a merchant seaman so I can go and see,
The world.
Madagascar.
Right.
Or so I can go to see India or China or, and it has just opened up my life, and it has given me a kind of self-education that you can't purchase. And it is a great joy.
Absolutely.
Well, we'll end on this and
Couldn't
say
agree more.
thank you for being our special guest
Thank
on
you for having me.
Power Pod Talks. It's all about the power player lifestyle, and you are that power player.